Hello and welcome to the Bucs Banter Podcast. This is episode 76, and it's a special episode because we are just over 24 hours until the 2023 NFL Draft kicks off. And it's going to be an exciting one, I think, because there is a lot of mystery surrounding this draft. I know you could say that any year, but that is especially the case this year. And before we get into talking all about what the Bucs might do at 19, if they'll stay at 19, and any other draft-related items that we deem worthy of our time here, I just want to remind everyone that you should, and it would be appreciated if you would, shoot us a subscription and a like and all that jazz on YouTube. You can catch the podcast, the Bucs Banner Podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And please make sure you are checking out BucsGameDay.com, the only Sports Illustrated website dedicated specifically to covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers all year round. I am Collin Hallboom, and I guess I'm a little biased because I am the draft analyst over at BucsGameDay.com. And because of that, I have been very busy this past week. I've probably written about 10,000 words in the last week, and but it's great, and I freaking love it. So I'm ready to get going. I am joined by my trusty, loyal, supportive co-hosts, Scott Capron and Bohdan Yard. Boys, how we doing? You ready to talk some Buccaneers, some NFL drafts, and whatever else we're thinking?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Can't wait for the draft tomorrow. Can't wait to see what the Bucs do, and tons of options. So yeah, I mean, they could go defense, they could go offense, they could make a trade. I truly can't wait to see what they do. So yeah, let's get into it, boys.
Yeah, a lot of people are really, at least the people in Tampa, are operating under the heavy assumption that it's kind of like a no-brainer that the Bucs are going to take an offensive tackle. But I think Jason Light often likes tackles, later in the draft, or offensive linemen later in the draft. And if he thinks there's better value there and he likes an edge rusher or a certain position, I don't think he's going to be afraid to just go with the player that he believes offers the best value. So that's just kind of an interesting thing to keep in mind, because everyone and their sister's cousin is, I guess that'd be your cousin, but are picking an O-lineman to the Bucs, including myself. I just submitted my final mock draft and I picked an O-lineman too. So listen to this hypocrite run his mouth, huh?
I mean, we can call you a hypocrite for some other stuff, but I don't think we need to do it here.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. But hey, if that's what they're likely to do, that's what you think they're going to do. It's a need. That's fine, right? Like, let's see it.
Yeah, it's the biggest need, and maybe we'll start there then, in terms of just talking about, like, I got a list in front of me of about 10 players who I think one of these players will be the Buccaneers' first pick, assuming they stick in the first round tomorrow night, and I feel pretty good about that. So I recognize there's still 10 guys, but they're at 19. So
yeah,
and again, like I said, it's a very wide open draft. So let's talk about the tackles. The guys who I think could be there would be Darnell Wright out of Tennessee, Broderick Jones from Georgia, Anton Harrison from Oklahoma, and that's really it. I think between those three guys, I think are the guys who could potentially be in that range. Darnell Wright and Broderick Jones have been mocked most heavily in that top 20. Should say top 18 prior to the Buccaneers pick. But when I keep running through these simulations of my own throughout the process of constructing my own mock draft, I've stuck with Broderick Jones. So I've found him to still be there at 19, just based on how I see some of the stuff before that playing out. But who knows, right? It's a shot in the dark. You never know, of course. Which I think would be an unbelievable get for the Bucs if they do end up with Broderick Jones on the board. Most people who are plugged in with the Bucs are really kind of settling in on Anton Harrison as the favorite for the Buccaneers. That's the betting favorite right now, right? He's a 21-year-old. He's the youngest of the tackles from Oklahoma, former basketball player, super quick on his feet, extremely agile, and he still has room, like the frame that can put on bulk. So the sky's the ceiling with Anton Harrison. He's one of those high upside guys, but he's also got a good bit of experience. He plays in that air raid scheme. He's super good at getting out, pulling and getting out in run block and getting downfield. So that's where his agility comes in handy. I find when I watch Anton Harrison, he's young though. Like I just said, it seems like he's very defensive, and I know that sounds silly because that's kind of like his job because the other guy's got a head start running at him. But if you watch a guy like Darnell Wright from Tennessee, like he is delivering the blows. Like his hands are just so heavy. Whereas someone like Anton Harrison, he's amazing at recovering, and he's still really solid. But I'd like to see a little more thump out of him, delivering those blows. But I think that's something that can come with time. Like, I don't know. That's easy for me to say. He's still a hell of a prospect and would be a fine pick at 19. But I'd like Broderick Jones better. And I think Broderick Jones probably has the highest ceiling of any of these. Well, Darnell Wright's got a pretty damn high ceiling too, actually. He's kind of more of that Trent Williams mold. So
with all that said, so you're not pissed at any of those picks, basically, if it comes down to them, right? Like, obviously, there's degrees to it and everything, but none of them you would be like throwing your hands in the air, right?
No, not if it's one of these guys. I mean,
okay.
Anton Harrison, I'd be probably a little less excited about than a Broderick Jones or a Darnell Wright. Because I mean, he's lower rated on my board, like he is most people's boards. But I trust Jason Light, like I've said time and time again, in terms of identifying talent on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. And if that's his guy and he takes his guy with conviction at 19, then I'm good with it. And Anton Harrison's been talked about a lot in the national media as a guy who's like, people who aren't aware of him, he's not on their radar. He's like, oh, look out for him. He's higher on NFL boards than people realize. But Bucs fans have been aware of that for a while because they're in such dire need for a tackle, and there's a good chance that the top 3 tackles are off the board by the time the Bucs are on the clock. So,
when you're looking at these 3 guys, are you looking like, I know there's been a bunch of discussion, or I guess it's just a few articles that are out there saying and tweets about Tristan Wirfs maybe switching to the left side of the ball. Can all 3 of these guys play either side? Is that a decision that will be kind of made on draft night, or what do you see from that perspective, Collin?
Fantastic question and a very important one. So Broderick Jones, if you draft Broderick Jones, he's playing left tackle. You're keeping Tristan Wirfs at the right, which is, I think, the ideal situation. Let me be clear. That's my stance. That is an advantageous thing. Yes. Do I think Tristan Wirfs can slide over to the left and be a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle? Hell yeah, I do. Do I think he's like all pro, like best in the league, depending on what Lane Johnson looks like this year on the right side and very comfortable there? Yes, that is a fact. Why would you mess with something if you don't have to?
Yeah.
So I would 100% prefer to keep Tristan Wirfs on the right side. Broderick Jones would come and play left tackle. Anton Harrison, he does have some experience playing left or right side, which is nice because it gives you that flexibility. But if they draft him, I would assume he would also be inheriting the left side. It's where he played last year. Same with Broderick Jones. Darnell Wright, who's my favorite of these guys. Like, I'll just say that. He is my favorite of these guys. Yeah. He played left tackle in his 3rd year, and then last year he switched over to right tackle. All right, for the Volunteers, and he was damn near flawless at right tackle. Like, he just looked so good. So everyone's kind of assuming because of that, well, the tape speaks for what it is. Clearly, he is just better on the right side. However, there's been reports that he would prefer to play on the left. I mean, a lot of guys would, based on how those contracts have been.
How the money, yeah.
But ultimately, I think what you got there is some flexibility as well. But so in terms of that would be, if Darnell Wright was to slip, that would very much be an in-house decision. Like, do they see Darnell Wright as a right tackle? And then, okay, we've already kind of toyed with the idea of Tristan moving over. We know he's good with it. We believe he can do it. We're going to go that route.
So Darnell Wright, a pick for Darnell Wright for Bucs fans means, okay, the line might look a little bit different next year, basically. Like, Tristan Wirfs, our anchor, might be somewhere playing a different position. But with those other 2 guys, they're staying in the left tackle. Okay?
That's right. If the Buccaneers see him as better off as a right tackle, which, I mean, he looked way better as a right tackle in college.
Yeah.
Some people are even like I heard, who was it who said this? Greg Cosell, one of the best draft minds in the business, was on a podcast with Dane Brugler and Fran Duffy, and they were talking about debating that number 2 pick for the Texans, if they're really going to pass on CJ Stroud, right? Are they going to go Tyree Wilson, or are they going to go Will Anderson? And
that's so fucked.
It is wild. And then Greg Cosell was like, does it not at all formulate into your equation, like I guess ultimately in support of Tyree Wilson, or not necessarily, but that's what he brought up, that Darnell Wright made him look like a little baby, like he couldn't budge him in any capacity. Like, where's the nuance to his skill set? Where's his refinement where he can beat you in different ways? Or is he just kind of, and it was a valid point. And then Dane Brugler very respectfully responded with, I think that's more of a compliment to Darnell Wright than it is a reason to pick holes at Will Anderson. So I thought that was interesting.
Right. That is, yeah. Sometimes, you do all this analysis and it's like, oh no, these guys actually played against each other, right? That are at the top of the board. And, obviously depending on the position and everything, but no, those are real data points and you can point to them. It's interesting for sure. It's in tackle also, by the way, like the difference between left and right tackle is so fucked. Like, okay, left tackles are valued way more. Tristan Wirfs is the best right tackle in the league, but he's so good at it, then you might move him to left and like have him play a different position than what he's played and what he was drafted at. Like, they're the same position, but they're absolutely not also in the same breath. It's just the way football works. Obviously, it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, and shout out to Luke Easterling, formerly of Bucs Wire. I forget the network he's switched over to now, and Draft Wire, which is a USA Today subsidiary. But he had a sit down interview, I believe, with Darnell Wright. I just saw this like shortly before we came on, and he quoted Darnell Wright talking about that exact thing, and saying they were asking him about it, and he's like, well, I'm right-handed, so when I'm on the right side, you got a guy. They're always trying to take the outside leverage. That's where those guys attack. So I got my right hand there, like, when they're asking why he did better. Makes sense. He's like, if I'm on the other side, I got my left hand there. It's my weak hand. He's like, so it's pretty simple in that sense. And it just like that is, like I'd rather arm wrestle with my right arm than my left.
I've seen it. I mean, you're pretty good with both, to be fair, but the righty especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then the other two linemen I get, like Paris Johnson is going to be long gone. Apparently he's now the betting favorite to go third to the Cardinals, which
I saw that.
Which is interesting. And I was toying with that idea myself because there's Kyler reports. They have so many holes to fill in Arizona.
They're such a great team to have at number 3, just in the mix right now, just like where that actually falls, because there's the 4 quarterbacks and they don't technically need one. They kind of need everything else, even though Kyler's totally like it's a psycho and right. So like a true anything can happen situation there. And just like this, like him shooting up the boards up to number 3 in the last couple days, really, right, Call? Like it's been pretty recent. So very that's my favorite part of the whole thing, when we don't know, and it's a true anything can happen situation, and not like, okay, yeah, it's fun when teams make terrible picks or like terrible trades and stuff, but no, we just don't know because there's so much that they need and that they could address or try to move down or whatever. So yeah, I can't wait for the to see what the Cardinals end up doing at 3, or if they just try to stockpile picks and get some big offers for that spot. But anyway, sorry, tangent there.
No, it's a good tangent. And so the top 2 linemen before these guys I'm talking about is Paris Johnson Jr. at Ohio State and Peter Skoronski at Northwestern. So those guys are expected to go in the top 10. Okay. Why they haven't really been mentioned.
Yeah, Skoronski to the Bears, right? I've seen a lot of that.
I think Paris Johnson. I think they want a left tackle. Skoronski is more of a guard.
Yeah.
Well, most people project him at guard, and I think for the Bears at 9, their priority will be tackle, and I think most people see Skoronski as a guard. I mean, that he played tackle in college, and maybe some guys see him there. We talked about it last time about the arm length and all that. Last episode of the pod. I have him going to Tennessee in my most recent mock draft.
Okay.
At I think 11 after the Eagles, I believe.
Does Skoronski kind of make sense as like a Jason Light guy? Because like I feel like he can play a bunch of different positions.
He might, but it doesn't matter, Bo, unless they trade, right?
Yeah,
that's the thing.
So I was just wondering.
Yeah, I think so, because he seems to be, based on his recent moves and how they've shuffled the lineup, based it on versatility. Like he's like anti-specialist role, which I said last week, I don't love that. Like, kind of want a specialist, you know what I mean? Oh, we got one specialist. That's Tristan Wirfs, right tackle. Let's move him now. Fuck.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm being facetious. Ryan Jensen is clearly a center as well. But yeah, so Broderick Jones. I seem to be the only one who has finalized Broderick Jones of the Bucs mock drafters, Bucs media guys. All of them seem to have Anton Harrison. So I kind of, who knows, like to, but I'm not just like doing that to be different. I do think there's a chance that it unfolds this way. Because a lot of those teams in between where 10, where I think like Skoronski's going to go, and then where the Bucs are at 20. So let's say 10 to 20. A lot of those teams could take an offensive lineman, but it's far from a guarantee. Teams like the Packers, the Commanders. Let me pull this document up here so I can.
I mean, most teams can use a lineman or lineman depth, right? So it's pretty safe if it's not boring. And hey, just not to interrupt, but just to kind of interject those. So I see Skoronski's over under on Bet365 here at 10.5 with the juice minus 120 either way. So that's dead on there. Depending which way you want to lean, but yeah, Tennessee's at 10. You said right.
11. Philly's at 10.
Oh, okay. Right. Philly at 10. Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So my computer's working real slow, so I can't even see who's picking where. But I don't know if I said like the Steelers are a team who could arguably need a tackle. I've actually settled on them going DB. They lost some guys, and they need help back there, and it could be a good spot for them. So like teams like that, you just don't know which way they're going to go, and that's going to determine whether one of these tackles are there, or if it's the difference between a Broderick Jones and an Anton Harrison. But Scott Reynolds of Pewter Report, he is historically very dialed in to the Buccaneers camp and what they end up doing, and he's had Anton Harrison for a minute. So maybe Jason Light just likes Anton Harrison better than Broderick Jones, even if he's on the board. Like the cool thing about the NFL draft is like we have all these like draft experts, prognosticators. They truly, though, have no window into these NFL franchises. And that's what I love about the NFL draft is like they have their completely own resources dedicated to this. They truly don't give a shit what the public thinks. And that's why you'll see a Cole Strange go in the first round last year and everyone's like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh, yeah.
That one seemed a little egregious.
It did, but he showed out all right, man.
Speaking of, we
just from a pick value, right? But
we give them too much credit, or maybe prognosticators give themselves too much credit that they can get into the heads of what these NFL teams do. We clearly see week to week, we have no idea what they're thinking, but like game to game from decision making, and certainly every draft. When you see what they reach for, or what certain teams end up picking in the first round, right? Versus what a pretty smart football consensus might not have agreed with, but hey, they're the ones making the picks, right? So
it's like, it's not only that, I think just from a macro level, it's like, we don't even know who's in the room, and we don't even know who in the room is actually making the decision. Like, is this an owner pick? Is this a coach pick? Is this a coordinator pick? Is it the scouting department? Like, who knows who has and every organization has a different hierarchy. So,
I know. We've talked about this. That's like the most frustrating thing on the planet for me. So, when Gruden was with the Raiders, everyone just, it's Gruden's team. Okay. And they had a GM. So then what the fuck happens
what does he do?
in meetings? What does he do? Like literally, not like, what's he do? Tell me what happens when Jerry Jones for Dallas, I don't know, wants to take a guy. I want to know exactly what the chain of communication is. Like, does he fire off an email?
How much tape did Jerry watch?
Yeah. Does he fax it? Or does he literally just walk into the room and say, no, this guy's available? That's what I want to know. Anyways. Yeah. Dallas.
So just look. So we're talking about these 5 offensive tackles. And again, this position, this position should be the focus based on, Buccaneers needs and how the draft has a good chance of falling. So we got what I would consider 5 offensive linemen who are first round worthy. depending. There could be a couple guards in there, but that wouldn't appeal to the Bucs. So Paris Johnson's going to be gone. Peter Skoronski is going to be gone, probably in the top 10. So you got 10 through to 19, and you got 3 first-round tackles: Anton Harrison, Broderick Jones, Darnell Wright, the guys we've been talking about if you're just joining us. The teams in that area who could potentially be drafting an offensive lineman, of course, include the Eagles, Titans, Packers, Patriots, Jets, Commanders, Steelers. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, they could all be gone. But if that happens, if those guys are all gone, then I think the Bucs are set up really nicely to take a hell of an edge rusher. And I think that's just obviously what you do. So when you were asking me if I would be disappointed in any of those guys, and I said I would not be disappointed in Anton Harrison, but he would be the one I would be least excited about of all those O linemen. If that scenario, the point is, I think I would rather one of the top tier edge rushers over Anton Harrison. I don't know based on what I've seen potentially, because I think one of the ones who would be available then would be a Nolan Smith, a Lucas Van Ness, or a Miles Murphy. And I think those are pretty exciting prospects.
It's also like a zero-sum game. Like, if there's a run on O linemen, that means there's a bunch of edge prospects that fall to you guys, right? So
exactly. Yeah. So anyway, I feel like we've done a fine job summing up the O lineman situation. I mean, my choice would be Darnell. Of the guys who I think will be there, would be Darnell Wright. He would be the one I'd want most. Then Broderick Jones. Then Anton Harrison. And then we'll stick on the offensive side of the ball, okay? Because again, might as well. And then we'll move over to the D guys I think are in play.
Okay.
The 2 tight ends, Michael Mayer and Dalton Kincaid. I say 2, and that's selling the whole group short, because there could be 2 more. There could be 2 more that go in the first round potentially. But yes, those are I would say the unanimous 1-2, whichever way you slice it. And it's flip-flop back and forth, man. People have been higher on Kincaid, and then now it seems pretty clear that, or at least the betting markets are reflecting that Mayer will be the first tight end taken.
Yeah.
He's certainly more of a traditional inline tight end, and he can still catch the ball. He's in the same mold as Gronk. Kincaid's in the same mold as Kelsey. Okay. Like, I'm not calling either of them Gronk or Kelsey. I'm saying,
you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. That wouldn't be the first place. Anyway.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if you're going to pick a type, okay.
Yeah.
Mayer is more that Gronk type in line. Dalton Kincaid is that Kelsey type, like elite receiving threat. And that's kind of how you slice those two. So the Buccaneers, again, I feel like I'm the only one who's considering this also. The Buccaneers, first off, Dave Canales, their new offensive coordinator, comes from the Seattle way of doing things, which is heavy 12-man personnel. They love to use their tight ends. Even though the tight ends they've had haven't been anything special, they still often run 2 of them out there. Disley and Noah Fant or whoever it is, right? We have the Buccaneers have Ko Kieft and oh my God, what am I doing? I have too many names in my head, folks. Cade Otton. Cade Otton,
yeah.
Jesus. So those first year players last year, I mean, Cade Otton looks nice. Ko Kieft does his job. He's a blocking specialist, but I think they want to add a difference maker at that position. At least I would. And I think in this draft where you have these 2 elite tight end talents that people might even be willing to pass on just because they know there's like 7 deep, like NFL starter caliber tight ends available. One of those guys could fall into your lap. One or both of them could easily be there at 19. And maybe I think Michael Mayer would be the type that would appeal to Jason Light personally, because I know it's not just up to him, but because he can do a bit of everything. So it's kind of like adding support for your offensive line at the same time, and a guy who's supporting your pass catchers and your quarterback. So there's a chance they take a stab at a tight end. I would not call it a high possibility at all, but it's worth mentioning. And then I feel like every single fan base in the world likes to likes to fantasize about the idea of Bijan Robinson ending up on their team.
I figured we would get there. Yeah.
So, like, why wouldn't I mention that? I mean, shit, if he's there at 19, and
it's possible, though.
Yeah, it is possible.
You're not just like giving it the token mention. I think it's not very, but I think it's definitely within the realm that they land them.
Yeah. So ask me if I'd be mad if at 19 they select Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I know that you would not.
No, I wouldn't.
What happens to Chad?
Oh man, what team at other than the Titans? No,
it's
it's
just
like
play wide receiver.
they would
Honestly.
both.
Honestly.
You'd use them both, man. Like I think that would be a pretty lethal pairing, and I think you'd find a way to get him. Rashad White's going to get plenty of touches, but anyway,
I think you would use them both, and by week 6, so it's like Bijan's playing 80% of the snaps or something like that. That's not our Rashad love has been well documented. I just think Bijan is that fucking good and like that good on all 3 downs. And oh my God,
it's tough to take him out. It's going to be really tough for him to get off of the field.
Just to get back to the tight end thing, Boom. But hey, I like both those guys a lot. A little bit concerning. I think Kincaid is already 24, Utah, etc.
Couple wives under his belt.
Yeah, at least.
Crushing it.
I think it would have just come down to, like, given the, let's say, tenuous quarterback situation at best, what helps that person most right now, right? Like, I'm honestly asking, like, is it another pass catcher up the middle and a guy who can block like a solid tight end like Meyer, for example, or is it just getting that extra stud on the offensive line and just shoring that up? I think it's kind of a reasonable question, right?
Sorry, Scotty, you're asking, I got distracted by a comment. You're asking if it helps whom more, the team
or quarterback?
Oh, the quarterback. Yeah.
For the Bucs specifically, like, what do you think is more important for them? Shoring up, getting another starter on the offensive line, or another, potentially very dynamic pass catcher up the middle of the field? I don't think it's an obvious answer.
No, I don't think it is either. I think most people would say, though, stability at that other tackle position would be,
and that's where I would lean. But I think I think it'd be exciting to get one of those tight ends, right? So just interesting.
Yeah, I got the hots for both of them. Like, again, if we took Meyer or Kincaid, I would be super pumped. Like, Kincaid, I think is awesome.
He's sick, man.
I think he's awesome, and I think he has the potential to be really good with how, like, teams are seeing what the Chiefs have done, having a weapon like Kelsey. And if you got a guy who's a little more sick with it as a receiver, but he can hold his own as a blocker just based on his size, like, look at how creative you can get as an offense. It really takes a ceiling off your offense, right? When you have a guy in there who could be used creatively and impact the passing game, both vertically and otherwise. So, I'm pretty excited. Yeah. Like, Scotty, you know what? I'm not like fearful like I've been in years past where I'm like,
I know sometimes it's just the worst.
Yeah. Where you're just so scared. There's one guy you really don't like. Like, we just talked about like 6 different prospects on offense who we could get behind, or at least I could get behind. And Dog's best friend, one of our best friends, take Robinson and be relevant again for half a season. So there you have it. There's one example of a Buccaneers fan who wouldn't be in support of that. And like, I can't blame that either. Like, they do have Rashad White. So the thing is, though, man, like, it's not always just about team needs, right? There's 7 rounds in this draft. So you can there's going to be a lot of flops, but if you're going to get a sure thing at a position that would be more of a luxury, but you think he's going to be an absolute star and all pro,
blue chip,
you got to consider it. You got to, if you're that confident in that position or that player.
And on a rookie deal for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And I'm obviously not a first round running back guy, but like we said, I think last week, if you can get someone controlled for 5 years and, take him at the 19th pick and he's a top 5 producing runner in the league, that's different, right? That is,
it's so different for running backs because those are usually their 5 best years too, right?
Yeah, so, exactly. Like, I hated the Zeke pick in Dallas. You went what number? Did he go 4 or 5? I think 4. It was 4. But he was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, he was awesome. Right. And he was productive. It wasn't
first 5 years.
Wasn't a good pick at 4, but at that price, that was worth it.
Now, sorry, I'm just going to get to this other comment here on YouTube from, again, Dog's best friend. Appreciate you jumping in the comments, my dude.
Mm-hmm.
And he says Kincaid in the first or Laporta in the second. So he's not opposed to a tight end. Sam Laporta is really interesting.
He's rising. I've seen him in the first quite a bit, actually.
See, I don't know if he sneaks in the first, but there was a time when people thought they could get him in the 3rd or the 4th. And I would say he's probably going in the 2nd for sure. he's nasty after the catch, man. He can do a whole bunch of good. And when you come out of Iowa, you're just ready to play that position better than every other school or prospect of any other school, right? So that's the other thing, though, that refreshes my mind. That's the thing with the tight end, though, man. Like, you could wait and get a good one in that second round. There'll be a bunch of guys waiting there.
That's where the determination that these teams need to make with the tight ends is it is deep, and those two guys are the cream of the crop, Meyer and Kincaid. But are they that much better than third or fourth? Right? It's almost like a fantasy draft those years when it was Gronk or Kelsey. And do you even want to get anyone until the last round kind of thing? Like in fantasy, this is like you need to determine, okay, yeah, those two, we have them graded the highest, but are they 5% better than someone we can get, let's say 40 picks later? Interesting. Not too often is one of my main takeaways or things that I'm looking for is kind of the tight end dispersion going into a draft. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens this year because I think there's enough guys that can justify good, like pretty high picks and really make an impact next year. So.
And Scotty, let me tickle your fancy here and just continue that conversation a little bit. One guy who is just every Bucs fan or media member I see who does a mock draft for the Bucs, you want to know who they're always sliding in there, is Luke Schoonemaker.
Oh yeah, from Michigan guy. Yeah,
like on day 3 as that it just seems like one of those common fallback guys. Like a Sidney Brown from Illinois, who I freaking love, by the way. Ontario.
But that's what I mean. Like, Schoonemaker isn't he isn't Gronk, he isn't Kelsey, of course. He's fucking good though. Yeah. Like he's a good football player, has great hands, and is a red zone threat. And that's I guess that's just kind of really just depends on the front office and what they think, right? So
if we're good, then I think that's plenty to talk about on the offensive side of the ball. Let's shift over to the defensive side of the ball because I already painted out a scenario. Well, there's many scenarios where a lot of those O-linemen could get scooped up by those whole bunch of teams I named between 10 and 20, who for all we know are all targeting offensive tackles, in which case it would be inevitable that some edge rushers would fall, which is perceived to be, by myself included, the biggest need for the Buccaneers outside of, offensive tackle. And there's some good ones who could potentially be available. Now, it's a big spectrum for Nolan Smith and Lucas Van Ness. Those are the two guys I would group together in terms of like their value is, Nolan Smith, I got him going 8 to the Falcons. Like that's probably his peak. And I've seen him slipping all the way towards the end of the first. He truly has. He's going in the first, but a lot, like people don't fully know where.
Yeah,
this guy ran a sub 4.40 as a defensive end. Like, are you fucked? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, that is utterly ridiculous.
That is. It's fucked though. That's like it's insane. What?
Unreal.
That's wild.
So, and he's got, we've talked about the traits of these guys before. And again, if you want to familiarize yourself better, check out my Twitter where I link most of my articles that I write, and I got some deeper dives on each of these players we're talking about. I wouldn't call them deep dives, but I go into a little more detail about the specific traits of each prospect, at least. Here we're more scenario discussion format kind of thing. And then, so Nolan Smith could go any which way. If he's there, that's super appealing to me because I love him. One of my favorite players in the draft. Like, he's more than just speed. Great leader, very versatile. And I think Todd Bowles could get really creative finding ways to use him, whether he stands him up. He drops Vea in coverage. So you do that with Nolan Smith. Just the different ways he could utilize him to generate pressure and different looks on his defense. And then, I forget where I was going with that. But so I would be fully in favor of Nolan Smith. I would love that. Oh, here we are. But the thing is, he's a speed rusher. And Shaq Barrett is a speed rusher. So Nolan Smith is a little undersized. Shaq Barrett's a little undersized. Both speed guys. Tryon Shoyinka is had to put on weight. He looks like a superhero, but I believe he's like a naturally skinny-ish dude who's just committed and gotten the gym. You know what I mean? Like, he's more of like an athlete, like speed guy too. I think you could classify.
I know. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you want to have a bit of a combination. You want to be able to attack a team's offensive edges in different ways. And if you just got a bunch of speed guys, it feels a tad redundant. So that would be my one reason why I could see Jason Light potentially passing on a Nolan Smith for someone like a Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa.
For what it's worth, I've sent Shaq Barrett's nutritionist like my bulking plan. I haven't heard back just to see like if they've implemented it themselves or anything like that. I mean, I assume they got it. Obviously, I sent them before and after picks. But yeah, no, I think that those are actually very good points. And yeah, I got nothing. I just wanted to add that in there. Sorry, boys. It's been a while. It's been a day. Fuck.
Yeah. So yeah. in terms of Lucas Van Ness, he could go real high. I have him going in this mock draft that'll probably come out tonight or tomorrow. I got him going to the Patriots because I had the Patriots kind of
like a Pats guy.
He seems Patriotsy.
The more I was thinking, I put a lot of thought into each team. It's kind of pathetic how much, like, I'm gonna get them all wrong, like most people will this year, but like the amount of thought and effort I put into each team is kind of pathetic. So I'm sitting there just like, what are they gonna do, and what'll happen before? And like, I believe at first I'm like thinking like the Patriots, if Jackson Smith and Jigba's there, they're gonna take them. Like they have to. Not like it's a foregone conclusion, but I'm just thinking. And then I have him going before then anyway, in which case, like, but the more I'm thinking about it, I'm like, the Pats don't build. That's not the Patriot way. The Patriots don't, the only place they invest is the defensive side of the football, and then they scrap together everything else on the offensive side, right? So
yeah, it's painful, to be honest.
Yeah. And Lucas Van Ness is just like a versatile dude who's like highly productive in limited snaps. So he's got fresh legs. He's got all the physical traits. He's like naturally very powerful. Early on in the process, I'm like, this guy didn't even start at Iowa. Like, why are we talking about him as a potential top 15 pick? And then the more I dug into him and the more I watched, I was like, shit, man. Like, Kirk Ferentz was just a little bit stubborn, right?
No, they just start
Iowa.
The seniors there.
Yeah,
that's what they Iowa. Do. It's like this weird thing. Also, what does that even mean, by the way? Yeah. Do they actually have to put in a starting lineup? Like, what if Van Ness is like, oh no, we have a package where Van Ness is on the field the first play, right? Like it's such football starting in football is so weird. But I know.
It should just be like snap leader.
Like exactly. Exactly.
So Van Ness, Bo, you said it. He just seems like a Patriots guy. Like you could line him up inside, he could do work there. You could line him up off the edge. His best days are definitely ahead of him. Highly productive in terms of tackle for loss and sacks, and yeah, that's kind of what that is.
Well, as painful as their offense is to watch, their defense was incredible, like really good. Yeah.
I described it as a juggernaut in the write-up. Their defense was amazing. I got another Iowa defender going in the first round of my final mock as well. But I'll leave that for your imaginations. Miles Murphy's the other guy who is even more of that heavier mold out of Clemson, who I think would definitely be appealing to the Buccaneers. This guy was talked about with, Will Anderson and Bryce Young and all those guys as being a top 5 pick. And he didn't miss one start at Clemson and until he opted out of the bowl game. And I feel like people are kind of sleeping on his production. And then he tested pretty well. Like I don't
and
really
just his freakness.
Yeah, like I don't really understand the slide there. Like I could see that being very interesting and a fine pick for the Buccaneers.
I think he was one of those top, like literally maybe the top recruit in his class kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think he was really good at Clemson. Maybe didn't quite match the hype, but also they've had studs on defense and just really good teams. So, maybe didn't elevate and separate as much as you would have hoped for someone of like that pedigree who's literally being the number 1 recruit. Still really good though. And absolutely a nutso athlete. I don't know. Could see someone not reaching in a bad way, but just like falling in love with him. I don't know. That's kind of he's one I have circled to go a little bit earlier just because of the testing, coaching, like a certain coaching staff thinking that they can, really get the most out of him. He's a perfect candidate for one of those.
Bit of prospect fatigue.
Yeah, Yeah, everybody's been talking about him at the top of the draft board for so many years now, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, shit, man. I think someone in the 20s is going to get a player, and then you're going to get a very motivated Miles Murphy, who, like you're saying, he's always been a top dog, and then he comes in, he falls in the 20s. He's going to be out with something to prove. So, that's a good potential guy. Will McDonald, out of Iowa State. He's actually he's tied for the all-time lead in Big 12 sacks. And he's one ahead of Von Miller, and he's Iowa State's all-time leader in forced fumble. So he's highly productive. He is like bendy, flexible dude, and he's a finisher. So we got people in the comments criticizing JTS for he says no cookie for JTS. Cookies are for closers, because JTS is notorious for like getting his fingers on guys but not finishing the deal, as you two know well.
Yeah.
Right there.
But Will McDonald's a finisher. Like, he finishes, and he's been a bit what I would consider a late riser. And most people have him, if you slide into the first round, it's exactly that, sliding in at the bottom. But he's a guy the Bucs have done work on, and they have met with him, and I like that. He's kind of like a cool player, but again, I don't know if they want a bit of a bigger body coming off the edge. The only other player who could potentially, because like shit, man, Todd Bowles loves his DBs. He is the head coach. Who could potentially be in play is Brian Branch, the safety out of Alabama. He's the best safety in the class.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah,
he's really fucking good.
He looks
Great
like
name too.
Yeah. He looks like if you put a guy who was in the NFL for a couple years back into college. Like, he's just kind of that like cerebral dude. Like, he's really good. He can do everything. He can succeed in man. He can play in the box. He can blitz. Like, he can manage his territory in his own. He's just very sound football player. Alabama was a different defense when he wasn't on the field. Completely different defense. He was the heartbeat of that defense. And that position falls off a cliff. Like, there is one first-round safety in this draft, and it's Brian Branch. So,
in a non-valued position as well, right?
Right.
So kind of So yeah.
And the most undervalued position, I think, in football.
And like, if we want to, like, there was all the chatter of the Bucs wanting Lewis Seen last year, and that was when they still had Mike Edwards on the roster and like other guys on the roster, right? They signed Ryan Neal to a 1-year deal, but as of now, really, it's just Antoine Winfield Jr. and him. So they're going to want to bring in a guy who is a safety, who can occupy the nickel, where they also lost Sean Murphy-Bunting. I mean, positionally, I feel like the Bucs are one piece away from having a nasty secondary, and it would be that type of player.
I think they could have one anyway. I think they could have a nasty secondary with who they have.
Totally.
Personally.
And I think that's how most people feel. So, which is why it's not really talked about. But I did feel like I had to at least include it just for him. And like, that's his, he'll probably be anywhere from the Commanders down to the bottom of the first, or he could even slide out. We could go and see no safety get drafted in the first.
Yeah. And I know we've discussed this in like both on the podcast and just in group chats and everything. Kind of the main takeaway is like the Bucs aren't fucked or anything. Like, they have a good team.
Well, what's funny
is, you know what I mean? Like, Scott, they do.
Scott, what's hilarious is the national media, all they see is Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, and it's like they completely disregard the rest of the roster.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of ridiculous. And like,
we're gonna get some really good underdog Bucs lines.
Yeah,
like 100%. Like, this all season, we're going to be like, oh, we should definitely take the Bucs this year.
And more importantly, they have a new offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I heard he has a pulse and everything.
So let's see, Byron Leftwich and Tom Brady, or Dave Canales and Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, fuck, man. Addition by subtraction, potentially. Like,
and just in general, just like the under the radarness, maybe this team could use not being they were basically a top billing while they had Brady, right? They aren't, they aren't the Jags or, the Texans or something now that they don't have Brady, but I think they slide back into the middle tier as far as like marquee NFL teams at this point, right? So maybe they need that. Maybe they need to not be on prime time 13 out of 17 weeks, like maybe this will be a good year for them. So just kind of thinking out loud about that. And, deciding to not consider the Trask and Mayfield situation as I say it. But I don't know, man. I just they're good. They have a good team. If the coordinator hits and Bowles lets them do anything, I suppose. I don't know. Yeah, like they could be really good. Or good enough to win the division, I should say.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And that's like totally reasonable. And I just feel like, I'm just kind of staying quiet in the back. Like I think most Bucs people who cover the team in Tampa area are. But there's a little too much slander going on out there.
Agree.
So.
I agree.
And so just to summarize, on offense, we talked about Darnell Wright, offensive tackle out of Tennessee, Broderick Jones, tackle out of Georgia, and Anton Harrison, tackle out of Oklahoma, as the 3 linemen I think are in play for the Bucs at 19. Throughout, 2 best tight ends, Meyer and Kincaid, as well as the best running back by a landslide in Bijan Robinson as possibilities for the Bucs with their first-round selection. And then on D, again, this is if they stay at 19. On D, Nolan's pass rushers, Nolan Smith, Lucas Van Ness, Miles Murphy, and Will McDonald. And then we threw in Brian Branch. I think the Bucs are going to be all about trading down if they can. I think that's something Jason Light has shown an affinity for in the past. Albert Breer reported how the Bucs someone had contacted them to gauge their interest for moving up, and he was very uninterested. So that tells you something. But again, that's not surprising to anyone who's seen Jason Light work over the years. The Bucs are without a 4th rounder also, so I know he's going to want to fill that big gap in the draft. So shit, man, they could trade out. It could happen. So we'll see what happens with that. And
I'm not ruling out something at quarterback for them yet.
Fair.
I mean,
oh yeah.
I
don't know. A little Trey Lance? Let's get a little Trey Lance in Tampa.
I think if you don't have to give up much, why not take a gamble on Trey Lance? I don't understand why the Texans wouldn't.
Yeah, I think everybody's
there's some talk in the
circling
Texans.
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not? Shit,
it's
man.
ingrained, right?
It's basically like a pick, right?
From San Francisco.
Maybe DeMeco Ryans.
I mean,
maybe Ryans knows the truth though.
Yeah,
there's a reason.
Yeah, that's not a great sign.
Yeah. So, and then I don't know. My final mock switched up more than I thought it would in some areas, which is interesting. I don't have it here, or I have it in front of me, but it's not published yet. But let me think if there's anything. I still got Bijan going to the Eagles at 10. I got Will Levis falling to the Houston Texans with their 2nd pick at 12. This is some exclusive info here. Darnell Wright going to the Jets. And I got Broderick Jones sliding to the Bucs, which would be nice. I have Anthony Richardson. You're going to hate this, Bo. I got him going to the Seahawks at 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the shine is worn off of my boy. Hey?
Dude, I love, I want to see him in a good place and where he's going to have a chance to chill out for a little bit and figure it out. I feel like with the Seahawks 2nd pick, they still.
I'd be very happy for him to be in Seattle, honestly. I think that's a great landing spot. I just was surprised. I was surprised that I felt like they would be happy to get him at 5, but if they can get him at 20, that'd be
no chance.
Yeah.
20.
Yeah.
People love him. Someone will make a move, but that would be awesome for Seattle.
I don't understand the Texans though. I just can't get past not taking CJ Stroud there at 2. That to me feels like
so many holes. If you're not in love with the guy, and I think the Ohio State quarterbacks in particular have this problem that is just going to follow them. Yeah, right? It's just going to follow them until somebody does it.
Yeah.
I get it. Why not just get the best defensive guy in the draft at 2 and then figure it out later?
Because you desperately need a quarterback.
Yeah, no, you can't go into the season. I think it has to be the Trey Lance team.
And I think there's some very good ones available. I think CJ Stroud is really good. That's why I am just so perplexed by it all. Obviously, doesn't feel the same way.
When your whole team sucks, you're in a tough spot. That's what it comes down to. It's not like they were awful but had a good defense or anything. No, they were terrible. So I would take Stroud. I would take the quarterback. But I don't think it's 99-1 that's the thing to do. I at least understand why they're oh my God, yeah, maybe Will Anderson. I wouldn't do it, and I don't think they should, but they're just that bad. They're that bad.
I think when I'm in that situation, as at least the way I foresee my mind working is, I would be all about trading down then.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Like I would just be looking to trade down so bad because someone wants Stroud, man.
Fuck,
Someone
no
wants
shit.
Stroud.
Yeah, but like I don't know. I think when you get into that realm of like when you're picking a quarterback at 2, you have to really believe that it's the franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's
But
just like if you don't believe that, what's the point?
Well, the point also, here's the other side of it though, Bo. You're sitting at 2. You think you're not just gonna you planning to be so shit you just know you'll be right there again next year? Like that just seems weird to me. Like like you can never guarantee you're going to be in such a position where you get a crack at what's a really, really highly rated quarterback prospect.
Yeah, they might just happen to not be bad enough to be in that top 2 next year, right?
Totally.
But
that's
the thing that I just keep on falling back to is like, who is where, like the day after you pick CJ Stroud, where is he in the list of 32 quarterbacks?
Yeah.
Well, that's tough.
And
a big part of that. Or you're saying if you're on the Texans, so I was going to say big part of that is where you are. Yeah, that's tough, right? It's like Fields in Chicago. Like
you kind of know. Yeah,
Fields was my QB1, and I was so hyped for it, and I was like waiting for him to like land in a good situation, and then I wanted him in San Fran so bad because I was cheering for the guy I put my name behind so strongly, and then he ends up in Chicago, and I'm like,
it's brutal.
I know.
So like it's just you almost can't evaluate a guy in that bad of a situation. But so I see what you guys are saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, man, there you have it. Again, make sure you're checking out bucksgameday.com. Got the draft covered. We do over there. Yeah. Please make sure you like this video if you're watching. If you enjoyed what we're talking about, we really appreciate the support. Make sure you're subscribed and tell your friends, tell your friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, so thanks for joining us, folks. Now we're at less than 24 hours till the 2023 NFL draft kicks off in Kansas City. For one, cannot wait. Yeah, my wife can't wait for it to be over. And I'm sure the same goes for you guys. So thank you so much for joining us as always, Scott and Bo. Appreciate you having you along for the ride. And we'll see you soon with some new Tampa Bay Buccaneers to talk about next episode. Till then, be well. Go Bucs.
Later, fellas.